There are moments in history when injustice shows itself so clearly, so shamelessly, that silence is no longer an option. Today is one of those moments, a moment that lays bare not only the fragility of a system that pretends to serve justice, but also the greed, arrogance, and cowardice of those who wield power without conscience. I speak of Judge Clarence Thomas, the same man who swore to uphold the law, the very law meant to shield the weak, the vulnerable, the oppressed. And yet, with one reckless stroke, he stripped me, Ibrahim Traoré, of my diplomatic status. Think about that for a moment. Let it sink in. Because this is more than just a legal maneuver. It is a display of arrogance. The kind of arrogance that reveals the true face of power when it forgets the people it is meant to serve. A judge, entrusted with the sacred duty of justice, chooses instead to play the role of pawn, serving influence, greed, and political games. A man who once swore an oath to fairness, now bending that oath to protect the powerful and silence those who dare to stand for what is right. Imagine the boldness it takes to believe that such an act could intimidate me, or the people I represent. I do not fight for personal comfort, wealth, or glory. I fight for dignity, for sovereignty, for the future of an entire nation. Burkina Faso is no stranger to struggle. For generations we have endured interference, exploitation, and oppression. But our story is not one of weakness, it is one of resilience. Our people have faced storms meant to break them, and yet they endure. And now a man sitting in a distant land behind walls of privilege dares to believe that with a decree, with a piece of paper, he can diminish that story, that legacy, that strength. But let us be clear, this act was never about me alone. It is an attack on sovereignty itself. It is a warning, a message sent to every leader and every nation that dares to claim true independence, that your freedom is conditional, that your power exists only by the permission of distant authorities, and that defiance will be punished. Clarence Thomas thought he could make me an example, but he miscalculated, because true power is not written on paper, nor sealed with decrees. It does not come from robes or titles or threats. True power comes from courage, conviction, and the unbreakable will of a people united in purpose. Picture this: a man far removed from our struggles, making decisions in comfort that affect lives he will never see, communities he will never know. From that distance, he imagines he can erase my legitimacy, but symbols are hollow against action. Titles, decrees, rulings. They cannot sever the bond between a leader and his people. They cannot erase the resilience of a nation that has weathered far greater storms than the arrogance of a single judge. And this is the truth he did not see. This is not only about me, and it is not only about Burkina Faso. It is about the message such actions send to the world. When a judge, a man entrusted with justice, chooses to serve wealth and influence instead of truth, when he bends the law to serve political interests, he sets a dangerous precedent. He tells the powerful that their power is untouchable. He tells the oppressed that their struggles do not matter. He tells nations that sovereignty is negotiable. But history does not forget such acts, and real justice always has a way of exposing the truth behind false displays of authority. Think about the arrogance it takes to see someone rising with strength and vision, and to believe that rise must be stopped. Think about the fear that drives such arrogance. Because Clarence Thomas's decision was not born from law or principle. It was born from fear. Fear that a nation could stand on its own terms without bowing to distant powers. Fear that the voice of Burkina Faso could echo on the world stage without permission, without compromise. But fear is a poor companion to authority. It blinds, it distorts, it leads to miscalculations and regret. Here is a man with decades of influence who should understand that the power of the gavel rests only on the legitimacy it carries. And yet, he acts recklessly, believing he can diminish what he does not understand. He believes that by striking at me, he strikes at Burkina Faso. But he is mistaken. The spirit of a nation cannot be erased by a ruling. The bond between a leader and his people is not defined by paper or decree. It is defined by courage, vision, and the unwavering duty to protect one's people against every attempt at suppression. This is where the arrogance of men like him becomes dangerous. They assume the world bows to titles, to symbols, to the illusion of authority. They think fear commands respect, that obedience can be demanded instead of earned. But they forget the truth: real power is earned through action, through integrity, through standing firm when others fall. And it is here they always fail. Because those who fight for justice, dignity, and the future of their nation do not tremble before empty symbols. They rise, they endure, and in the end they prevail. So let us be clear. When Clarence Thomas tried to strip me of diplomatic status, it was not only an attack on me. He tried to rewrite history, to claim that power belongs not to those who wield it justly, but to those who cling to it selfishly. He tried to send a warning: rise too far, speak too boldly, resist too strongly, and you will be punished. But he failed, and he failed spectacularly, because the measure of a leader and the measure of a nation is not in what can be taken away. It is in what cannot be broken. Spirit, vision, resilience, courage. These are beyond the reach of decrees, threats, or fear. And this is why his action will not be remembered as authority. It will be remembered as arrogance, as misjudgment, as fear disguised as law. He dared to strike at someone whose legitimacy comes not from foreign approval, but from the people he serves. He dared to believe that the rise of a nation could be stopped with a declaration, a ruling, a piece of paper. And in that attempt, he exposed not me, not Burkina Faso, but himself. He revealed the fragility of power built on fear, the hollowness of authority stripped of justice, and the limits of a man who has forgotten the meaning of his oath. So let us see this moment for what it is: a lesson in the arrogance of those who try to control what they cannot understand. A lesson in the courage required to stand firm when the powerful strike. A lesson in the truth that dignity, sovereignty, and justice are never negotiable. They are earned. They are defended. They are preserved, even against those who wear robes and pretend their titles make them untouchable. Let the world remember: no decree, no ruling, no court can erase legitimacy. They cannot weaken courage. They cannot silence vision. Burkina Faso, my people, and the cause we fight for are not subject to the fragile ego of one man. And Clarence Thomas, in his attempt, revealed far more about himself than he ever could about me or my nation. Understand this: I do not speak to provoke. My words are not anger without purpose. I speak because silence in the face of corruption is not neutrality. It is complicity. To remain quiet when power is abused is to consent to injustice. And when Clarence Thomas, entrusted with the highest duties of law, thought he could strip me of protection, he revealed his true character. That character is not hidden behind robes or titles. It is plain for the world to see. Look beyond the formality, beyond the illusion of civility, and you will find fear masquerading as authority. A deep fear that a leader like me, a nation like Burkina Faso, could rise independently, unapologetically, and without permission on the global stage. Fear that truth could no longer be hidden. Fear that centuries of manipulation and exploitation would finally be challenged. And how did that fear reveal itself? Not through reason, not through integrity, not through the law as it is meant to be applied. No, it revealed itself through a reckless attempt to strip away protections, to diminish status, to manufacture weakness with the stroke of a pen. That is not justice. That is arrogance dressed in the robes of law. It is the arrogance that mistakes authority for ownership, that believes power is a weapon for self-interest rather than a responsibility for fairness. He cloaked his fear in symbols, hoping the world would see principle instead of desperation. But we see through it. We see the calculations, the alignment with wealth and influence, the choices that shield the few and sacrifice the many. We know the act against me was not grounded in law. It was not reasoning, it was control. It was an attempt to enforce submission, to send a message that obedience is demanded, not earned. And this is more than arrogance or fear. It is betrayal. A betrayal of me, as a leader striving to serve and protect my people. A betrayal of Burkina Faso, a nation reclaiming dignity and sovereignty after centuries of interference. And a betrayal of every community, every family, every individual who has ever been denied the justice they deserved. Think about it. How many lives have been shaped or destroyed by decisions born not of principle, but of selfishness, fear, or corruption? Every time justice is manipulated, every time authority is abused, the consequences spread. They reach beyond the individual. They touch nations. They touch generations. So when he struck at me, it was not just one man against another. It was a blow against the idea that a leader can rise independently, that a nation can act with true sovereignty, that justice can exist in its purest form. In that moment, he revealed his priorities. He revealed where his loyalties lie. He revealed the fragility of his own authority. Because for those who cling to power through fear and coercion, every act of genuine leadership is a threat. Every stand for justice, every step toward independence, every decision made for the people is seen as defiance. And so he acted, not because it was right, not because it was lawful, but because he could not tolerate the dignity of strength in someone he assumed was subordinate. This is the pattern we must recognize. Authority without integrity is fragile. Power without principle is unstable. Influence without justice is temporary. When Clarence Thomas used his position to strike at me, he revealed not strength but weakness. He exposed the emptiness behind the robe, the hollowness behind the gavel, the insecurity that drives him to lash out in defense of the status quo. And it is in these moments, when the mask slips, that true character is revealed. Not a guardian of justice, but a man driven by fear, arrogance, and self-interest. Let us be precise. What he attempted was not law. It was dominance. It was intimidation. It was the assertion that power matters more than principle. He tried to convince the world that legitimacy comes from recognition by others, not from the courage to serve one's people. He tried to impose the illusion that influence and fear could replace justice and truth. But we know better. We know this much: no gavel, no decree, no act of intimidation can strip away the spirit of a people, the resolve of a leader, or the dignity of a nation determined to walk its own path. And so when I speak with purpose. Silence in the face of betrayal is complicity. I speak because those denied justice, those silenced by arbitrary power, deserve to know they are not alone. I speak because no single act, no matter how arrogant, can erase decades of struggle, weaken a nation's will, or alter the truth. When Clarence Thomas tried to strip me of diplomatic protections, he revealed not strength, but fear, not principle, but arrogance, not law, but betrayal. Yet in that betrayal, he revealed something else: the reality that those who serve with courage, who act with principle, cannot be diminished by the petty calculations of corrupt authority. This is the lesson. Fear and arrogance may wear robes of justice, but they cannot conceal the truth. They cannot erase integrity. They cannot silence those who refuse to bow. And in exposing his own weakness, Clarence Thomas only strengthened the very cause he sought to break. He reminded the world of what leadership looks like. Leadership rooted in accountability, in service, in the courage to stand firm when threatened. So let history record it clearly. When he struck at me, he revealed himself. When he tried to diminish Burkina Faso, he exposed his own fragility. When he betrayed the principles of justice, he reminded us why truth and courage must always rise above corruption and fear. His act was not a failure of law. It was a failure of character, one that will echo far beyond a courtroom. True authority does not come from fear, but from principle. Not from coercion, but from service. Not from betrayal, but from loyalty to what is right. And what is remarkable is how quickly the world saw it. His act was not a triumph of justice, but a spectacle of incompetence. He believed his title, his seat, his robe gave him the power to twist reality, to punish defiance. But he did not count on the truth. He did not count on history. He did not count on the resolve of a people, and a leader who will not be intimidated by hollow threats. So let us speak plainly about Judge Thomas. Many see him as silent, cloaked in legality. But behind that facade is a man entangled in networks of influence. A man who has chosen wealth over justice, privilege over principle, and power over the people he is meant to serve. His rulings have not defended the vulnerable, but stripped them of rights. His opinions have not upheld justice, but advanced corporate interests, foreign agendas, and personal gain. Now he thought he could do the same to me. He thought he could do the same to Burkina Faso. But he miscalculated. He underestimated the fire of those who refused to bow. He underestimated a nation that will never see its leader humiliated by a foreign judge. He underestimated the power of truth. The kind of truth that does not tremble before robes or titles. The kind of truth that cannot be erased. Because what does it mean when a judge strips a leader of diplomatic status? It is meant to humiliate, to isolate, to delegitimize. But in this case, it revealed only him. It was a symbolic strike, meant to make the world doubt my influence, my ability, my integrity. But here is what he failed to see. Symbols of oppression collapse when faced with the reality of action, the strength of a united nation, and the moral force of a just cause. In trying to weaken me, he exposed his weakness. In trying to intimidate Burkina Faso, he revealed his fear. And within hours, the very act he thought would display strength crumbled. The backlash was swift, undeniable, global. He was no longer seen as a defender of law, but as a man who overreached, a judge increasingly detached from the people he claims to serve. The arrogance that led him to strip away my diplomatic status is the same arrogance that blinds those who believe power comes from fear instead of respect, from coercion instead of truth. Understand this is not about me alone. I am only a symbol of something greater. When he struck at me, he struck at the principle that no nation, no leader, no people should be subject to the whims of a distant power. When he tried to humiliate me, he humiliated the very idea of fairness he pretends to defend. And when the world recognized the act for what it was, a desperate and biased display, the humiliation shifted entirely to him. But context matters. Judge Thomas does not act in isolation. His record is clear, undisclosed ties to powerful interests, consistent rulings that benefit corporations and elites, and decisions that harm the very communities justice is meant to protect. Again and again, he has chosen wealth over fairness, privilege over principle, and personal networks over the people. So I speak not from anger, but from determination. Determination that injustice will not stand. Determination that efforts to intimidate leaders who serve their people will backfire. Determination that corruption, no matter how it dresses itself in robes or titles, will be exposed. Because power rooted in fear is fragile. Authority that betrays trust is hollow. And a man who acts for himself rather than for principle will eventually regret his overreach. So let us be clear, Judge Thomas, your attempt to strip me of my diplomatic status has failed, not just for me, but for the truth, for Burkina Faso, and for justice itself. Your corruption, your arrogance, your favoritism are revealed. Your effort to diminish a leader, a nation, and a principle has only spotlighted your own flaws, your failures, and your fear. History will not remember this as your triumph, but as your exposure, a cautionary tale of hubris, greed, and moral bankruptcy. Because leaders are not defined by the symbols others try to take away. They are defined by courage, by action, by the willingness to stand against intimidation and speak truth. And today, I stand not alone, but with the people of Burkina Faso, with every nation fighting for sovereignty, with every community that refuses to accept injustice as inevitable. Together, we have witnessed the collapse of pretense and the rise of what is real, what is righteous, what is just. Let this be a lesson to all who wield power without principle. A warning to those who twist justice for personal gain, and an inspiration to every leader, every citizen, every human being who knows that dignity, courage, and truth will always outlast corruption, fear, and arrogance. Because no gavel, no title, no act of intimidation can erase the truth, or the resolve of those committed to justice. Today the world has seen it. Judge Thomas tried to strike fear, but he revealed only his weakness. He tried to humiliate, but he exposed his corruption. And he will regret it, not only in the backlash of this moment, but in the judgment of history. We will continue to rise, to speak, to act, not because it is easy, not because the world permits it, but because it is necessary. The fight for justice, the demand for dignity, the defense of sovereignty. These are timeless, unyielding, unstoppable. I lead not for myself, but for Burkina Faso, for Africa, and for every silenced voice that refuses to remain silent. So let Judge Thomas remember this. He tried to diminish a leader and a nation, and instead proved that truth, courage, and justice are stronger than his greed, his fear, and his arrogance. Let the world remember this moment not as a show of power, but as the unmasking of its fragility. Titles cannot replace integrity. Robes cannot replace principle. Power without morality is nothing but illusion. And to the people of the world, hear this truth: corruption, no matter how entrenched, is temporary when confronted by courage. It may look immovable, shielded by wealth and influence, protected by fear. But courage can undo it. Courage exposes it for what it is, weakness disguised as strength. So stand firm, not as an act of defiance alone, but as an act of principle. Stand firm when corruption threatens you, when truth is twisted, when power is wielded as a weapon instead of a duty. Stand firm, because you are not only defending yourself, you are defending the dignity of your people, the future of your institutions, the expectation of justice. Stand firm because courage is contagious. When one stands, others follow. What begins as defiance becomes a movement, a wave, a force that cannot be contained. Speak boldly, even when fear surrounds you, even when the powerful try to silence you with threats and decrees. Speak boldly because words carry truth, and truth cuts through the thickest lies. Speak boldly because history remembers the voices that defied injustice, not the ones that stayed quiet in fear. Every word of truth chips away at corruption, weakens the foundations of tyranny, and inspires generations to come. And act decisively. Action is the proof of conviction. The world does not remember those who only spoke of justice. It remembers those who pursued it, no matter the cost. Hesitation allows corruption to spread. Inaction strengthens the illusion of untouchable power. But every step taken in truth, no matter how small, undermines systems built on fear. Leadership is not measured by rhetoric or title, but by the courage to take responsibility, to face consequences, and to choose what is right. The future does not belong to the corrupt. It belongs to those who dare, to those who rise, who demand justice, who refuse to accept the rule of arrogance and mediocrity. The corrupt may have wealth, they may wield influence, they may command fear, but they do not possess the ultimate power. They do not hold truth. They do not command unity. They cannot claim the moral authority that comes only from integrity. This lesson must echo across borders and generations. When courage confronts corruption, when principle stands against self-interest, when action replaces silence, the world shifts. Power is never permanent, and history always favors those who stand for justice. Understand this clearly: corruption thrives in silence. It survives when people look away, when injustice is accepted as inevitable, when systems are seen as untouchable. But that is an illusion. Corruption adapts and deceives, but it is never invincible. It depends on fear, on compliance, on the absence of courage. Remove those and it crumbles. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is mastery of it. It is standing firm when every instinct tells you to run. It is speaking boldly when threats surround you. It is acting decisively when consequences are certain. The greatest victories against corruption are never born of comfort. They are born of struggle, of risk, of daring to face the impossible. Courage is the great equalizer. It turns ordinary people into leaders. It turns oppressed nations into sovereign powers. And it ensures that corruption, no matter how deep its roots, cannot last. So to every citizen, every leader, every observer, the world belongs to those who dare, to those who stand when it is easier to bow, who speak when silence would be safer, who act when hesitation would feel easier. Justice is not handed down. It is claimed. It is earned. It is fought for. And when you take up this responsibility, you are never alone. Others will rise with you. Movements will gather. The power of courage multiplies because it draws strength from every soul that refuses to surrender to fear, arrogance, or oppression. Let this message reach far beyond this room and far beyond this moment. Corruption is always temporary when confronted by courage. Fear may try to dominate you. Arrogance may try to intimidate you. Power may try to suppress you. But courage will endure. Courage will inspire. Courage will prevail. So stand firm, speak boldly, act decisively. In doing so, you join a legacy greater than yourself, A legacy that proves justice cannot be denied, that truth cannot be buried, and that the corrupt, no matter how entrenched, will always fall. And that is why Judge Thomas regrets his action. Not because he faced resistance, but because he faced truth. A truth more enduring than titles, stronger than decrees, and greater than any gavel. History is watching, and history will not excuse him.